Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you this morning?
I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. You ready to start?
Sure.
All right. If you don't mind, then I'll provide a small introduction to our listeners. Hello, dear listeners. My name is Tanja from TPTalks. I was born in Slovenia, made in the US over 20 years, and matured in France with an Austrian Colombian partner. We've been globe hopping now for over 20 years on different continents. Professionally, I've been an international recruiter, HR manager, trainer, and coach within this intercultural environment. Now, more specifically, we've been globe hopping so much that I've asked myself each time I move, there's a job change, and I have to learn the language and the job. And with that, how do I network? How do I write my resume without copying and pasting resume practice from one country to another? How do I navigate interviews? And finally, what if I'm a globe hopper without really knowing my next professional step? A job assessment may be interesting. Having had this experience as a job seeker and a professional, I offer training and coaching solutions to other globe hopping individuals who want to either learn it and or live it through training and coaching, and while having kind of a good time. It always helps. As I had mentioned, I've been in this multicultural and multilingual recruitment environment for over 20 years. And I look forward today to partnering with Amy in talking about change management. And as Amy and I like to call it, comfort zone is a great place where little or to nothing really happens. So Amy and I have been friends since our master's studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And even though change management has been a constant in our professional, personal lives, so has our friendship. And today, we've decided to explore more on this change management. Now, without further ado, I'm going to stop right here and let Amy, let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Tanja. It is lovely to be with you today. I know that for me, it's early in the morning, and I think for you, it's the afternoon. So that's
Right.
just another example of what does it mean to have a cross-cultural global conversation.
Right.
But I live in the Midwest, and I was born and raised here, and I am an executive coach and focus a lot of my time on supporting my clients, which tend to be more experienced professionals or leaders in organizations who are looking to make a change in their career. They might feel stuck. They might feel ready to move on and do something different, or they're just not sure how to make a more meaningful contribution in the world. And so I enjoy helping people navigate the waters of change. And I'm excited about this topic because change often means being willing to step outside of our comfort zones so we can stretch and grow and learn things about ourselves in ways that we wouldn't normally experience in our day-to-day routines. So I also work with leaders around their development, just how to be better, how to be more competent in their leadership skills, maybe change their style, be more aware of how they come across, and how to better improve in areas that can help them to be more effective and more happy, I think, when they are out in the world doing what they're really great and talented at doing. So it's wonderful to be here, and wonderful. I'm excited to work with you today.
I'm really excited to do this. We've been wanting to do this for such a long while, and considering that we are 7 hours difference and on 2 different continents, I'm here in France and Amy is in Milwaukee, near Chicago, for those of you who don't know where Milwaukee may be.
Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin, not Illinois, so it's in the Midwest. We're going to be diving right in now because I'm really looking forward to exploring this with you. So if we were to kind of paint the picture with our current reality, life is pretty fast. Life is going really quickly. I mean, I think Amy, the last time you said we're like a Google search engine. You get a word and boom, you're going out there. So that's really kind of I see the reality here in my neck of the woods, which is France, and then in Europe, is that at least the people, the clients that I serve, and that it's often like, okay, you get one or two questions, and even before the question is finished, you go into the mode of operation, and you want to be really quick. And sometimes, it depends on our energy level in the morning, that could be great. After a while, it gets a little bit fatiguing. So I don't know, what do you think about, how would you paint the picture with our current reality, where in your neck of the woods, which is in the States?
Yeah, well, I think we talked a little bit about this once before, that and I think it's beyond just the US, it's our culture as a norm, is that we're all about speed and efficiency. And the reality is that many of us humans aren't really designed to move as fast as a computer, or like in a nanosecond.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means that there's higher rates of people experiencing things like stress, whether that's at work or it's at home and it's being brought into work. There's higher rates of people not feeling good about themselves. I was just looking at I'm in a course, and they were talking about some research that came through the CDC, which is called the Center of Disease Control, which is part of an arm of our government that looks at public health. And there's actually a study that came out to show that in the US, teen girls, so teenage girls, so not even adults quite yet, are experiencing high levels of increased sadness and even violence. And it's because, and even suicide. And a lot of it has to do with mental health challenges and stress, or just perceptions about themselves, their bodies, what they're supposed to be like. And this is at a young age, teenage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I think the issue there is, and this is very true, especially in companies and organizations, things are moving at rapid levels of speed. Things are moving quickly, changes are happening, new leadership's coming in, organizations are constricting or expanding. Businesses have had to change because of things that happened during the pandemic. And what it really means is that people's ability to be flexible, agile, respond, let go of things, not harbor on things or get stuck, is more like needed than ever before. And that's what's challenging, because we are creatures of habit. We like routines, and we like things to be known and to be able to anticipate or plan. And when you have rapid change happening, it's difficult to do that. We have to be more iterative and open to change and just accepting and embracing. So I think today when we talk, these are some of the things that are going to be important for anyone who's looking to explore new opportunities, who wants to make a change in their life. A lot of this is about how we handle the experience itself. And I have some other things I'll share about that when we talk about things like pivoting. And so, yeah.
Great. Thanks for that introduction. And I'll just bounce it off, because it's people say, yeah, but it only happens in the States. It only happens in France. We're becoming interconnected community more and more, thanks to the new technology and digitalization that's gone into our everyday lives, and that's been introduced in our everyday lives. And having said that, yeah, we are very much creatures of habits. We have certain habits that may be conscious or unconscious, and we keep on doing it. However, this new way of working, which is going at Google speed. Oh, tomorrow or yesterday there was a client. Tomorrow it needs to be delivered. Even though the machines can't do that, we as humans are not made like machines. And I always say to my clients, we made the machines, so we got to take a step back as humans. And because if we don't, here in France as well, more than ever, 4 out of 5 people will change jobs in the next 5 to 10 years, and they won't look back at it. Stress is an ever-present factor in the work area. And having said that, it's really not just talking about the change, but how does that comfort zone, how can we redefine that comfort zone? Is it fight or flight? Or what is it? What else is it? So without further ado, maybe we can jump into it and see what the definition of a comfort zone may be. And I was really curious to go into Webster's dictionary and look at what is comfort zone in very simple terms. It gave me two definitions. The first one was the temperature range within which one is comfortable. So it really talks about the temperature range, you know, warm, hot, or cold, which I really could relate to it, you know. And the second definition was the level at which one functions with ease and familiarity. And I have to say, both of them speak to me. Yeah, they're kind of simple and generic, and I'm not here to make it generic or simple, because each individual is different and can interpret it differently. However, that definition really kind of spoke to me, in be it a temperature range or the level at which one functions with ease and familiarity. And once you put that into the sphere of where we are today, where we're going quickly to adapt to the new ways of working, the digitalization, the media, it gets shaken up. So that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to share the definition of comfort zone. What would you say the comfort zone would be for you?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking as you were talking, a word popped in my mind, another way of thinking of comfort zone, and I'm looking up the dictionary, the Oxford definition of homeostasis, the tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by physiological processes. So this idea of balance, right? Comfort zone. So when you think about a comfort zone, I was thinking of another analogy of the difference between a sprinter and a long distance runner, right? There are totally different training styles. There are totally different experiences of a sprinter versus a long distance runner in terms of how they operate. And when we talk about things like speed and agility, there's a big difference between a sprinter and a long distance runner. But both of these types of runners, they all need recovery time, right?
Right.
They need, and particularly I've done this, I've looked at this once with a client, because what we talked about was how she operates more like a sprinter. So she would get involved in these like projects and things and be like off and running. And then when the project ended, and these were short-lived, very intense projects, she would sort of need time to recover. And so finding her homeostasis, right? Finding this balance or equilibrium. Whereas long distance running, which I think you and I have done, and I think you still do running, not me so much. It's about pacing and timing and being able to maintain over a distance of time. So when we think about a comfort zone of a long distance runner, I think they're almost like runners that run at a distance are learning how to run at a speed and pace that allows them to breathe, that allows them to maintain and stay in a cadence so that they can successfully complete and get to the finish line, right? Complete the race and get to a finish line. So comfort zone, I think especially when you're looking at something like making a change or transition, is, to me, it has more to do with an individual who hasn't necessarily taken a risk or taken on some new assignment or new opportunity or done something outside of their regular job description that would suggest that they're ready to grow, right? So maybe they've been in a job, instead of like 2 years, it's been 5, 6, 7 years. And one day they look up and go, oh, I've been doing this for quite a while. And this is not necessarily, many people assume, well, maybe in the Gen Z or even the Gen Y generations, so people that are a little younger than Gen Xers, which you and I are, oh, that's not a usual experience. And, most people change jobs within those generations every 1 to 3 years. And I think that when I work with leaders, particularly, and I find that that isn't the case, that maybe they've been working for a while in a position, 5 to 6 years, they start showing signs that they're ready to make a change, but it often is due to things like dissatisfaction, or they are feeling depleted, or they're tired of their boss, or they don't agree with the leadership anymore. So these are important things to think about when we think about comfort zone. It could be, are you happy at work?
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling challenged at work? Or have you become complacent, or just accepting that this is the status quo, this is how life, this is how things are going? That might be an indication that you have not put yourself out into a situation or circumstance, or accepted some new challenge, some new opportunity that is inviting you to stretch, that's inviting you to get out of, quote unquote, the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
wouldn't you say at the same time that maybe sometimes, it's kind of like a catch-22? You may want to go out, but at the same time, you're really scared. I know I can think of, one of the times that we had to make the move, and I really didn't want to, because I was quite happy. Things were rolling. We both had our jobs. Life was settled. We had our friends, family, and all of a sudden, boof, here's another opportunity. And for me, it wasn't like, okay, I'm just going to jump and go. It was more like, yeah, I do, but I need some time to kind of reflect on this and, think about it. And when I think about it, it's more like a systemic thinking. It's like, okay, I need to calm down, first of all, because I get often just very overexcited. That's one thing. And having that excitement, I go into fight and flight. And afterwards, I start making an image that doesn't really exist. So the first thing I started thinking about, how good would it be for me? So actually, what the fear that I had was the initial fear, but when I started thinking of the pros, I had more pros than cons. Yeah, Tanja, you can learn a new language. Yeah, Tanja, you can expand what you're doing. That's great. And then once I was okay with myself, then I kind of expanded that circle to my partner. And then I thought, okay, my family, that's okay. And then just kind of slowly take that thinking time. But as I was thinking also, I was also taking small steps and having conversation during those conversation. And then like that fear, at the same time that I was scared, I thought, yeah, I'm not going to jump into it. And at the same time, I'm going to take these little baby steps to find information and get a little bit more comfortable. Well, lo and behold, of course, we left. Here we are now. But all that to say is that, yeah, sometimes, comfort zone is a great place to be. And sometimes it will be nice to stretch it. But because of that fear, it's like, oh my, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. As you were talking, the word familiarity came up.
Right.
I think comfort zone is about hanging out in familiarity. It's safe, to your point, right? It's safe, it's secure. It invites a feeling of, I'm okay. I know what I'm doing. I have a sense of what's happening around me. I know how to make a difference. I know how to keep my commitments. So it's all those things, right? It's all those things. And it does affect our psychological experience. And I'm no therapist per se, but I think that when we look at what we were articulating earlier about the reality of how fast life itself, the world in which we live in, is pacing at such a rapid speed, and how much things continue to change and will continue to change based on things like technology, based on things like public health, like dealing with a global pandemic,
right?
Based on things that are outside of our control. This is the reality that all of us, all humans, all beings, really, animals too, we're being invited to think about. So what skills are needed? What will we need in order to be able to stay on our surfboard, because we need to surf,
Right,
really,
right.
right?
That's a nice image. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I always love that image of surfing. And also this idea of the fact that self-correction and agility are so needed. And what I mean by that is I have a teacher, she's a meditation teacher. She had been a monk and she left and became a coach. And then she started working with the Dharma, and she's now a Dharma teacher. And she once gave me a beautiful image of thinking about what does it mean to be able to self-correct. She said, imagine yourself water skiing and standing up, getting up on the skis and actually staying up while you're literally, being dragged by the boat, not dragged, that probably sounds a bit dramatic, but pulled, right, by the boat, and you're skiing. She said, if you really pay attention, the person that's standing up is probably making slight modifications, left, right, so you can stand center continuously. That is what we call self-correction. I'm constantly correcting, moving, shifting to my weight this way, shifting my weight that way. And when we think about the ability to stay up, stand up straight while moving at such a speed, we have to be able to self-correct. We have to be able to be agile and flexible. And so that's kind of the anecdote to this idea of comfort zone, because when we are moving outside of our comfort zone, it does mean, are we willing to explore things that we don't know about? Are we willing to give up a little bit of that security to enter what might feel as not such as an unsafe zone, not in a way that would be harmful, but a way that gets us to be more alert and aware of something that we've not experienced before, and not have answers, but to understand that part of growing is, I think you said it in the beginning, there's very little growth in comfort. There's more growth when we are outside of our comfort zone. I think many people today get that conceptually, but what changes is the fact that when we make pivots, and I looked this up before we talked today, there's a great article that talks about the difference between a micro pivot and a macro pivot. And the micro pivot is sort of looking at something like you're looking at it from a microscope. It's what's happening internally when a change is occurring, right? So our attitudes, our feelings, how we think about things, our narrative, what we're saying to ourselves when these things are happening, right? And if you're in a company, it could be the way in which you're leading, or your operating systems, or things that make things work. The reason that that's important is because those often impact what we call the macro pivots. The macro pivots are the big changes. You always hear about, life-changing events, divorce, marriage,
Absolutely.
the birth of a child, the loss of a job. These are macro pivots. And when we are engaged in macro pivots, it's really important to remember that that we acknowledge that it's happening, so we don't try to act like it's not real. Two, that we think about, well, what's helped us in the past when we went through a big change? What worked for us in the past? Would that apply today? Could that still be helpful? And then remember that while we're having these bigger pivots, the macro pivots are actually happening. So what is my mindset telling me about this? Am I excited, or is this terrible? What is my narrative about this change? Am I living in fear, or am I embracing this change? So I'm sharing that to add to the layer of the conversation around this idea that all intermixed in these changes, these pivots, is the reality of change. Change is always going to be something we can count on. And finding our homeostasis is important, but the ability to know, when is it time to get going? When is it time to stretch? When is it time to be welcoming something new that's going to invite me to explore and learn and grow is very key.
That really, thanks for sharing that, because that really speaks to what I see in my clients on a daily basis. Some of them are really ready, ready. They've got their CV in English. They've practiced the interview. They're like, they've got the visa. They're ready to go, and they're just kind of stuck in this inertia. And what the person that I coached yesterday said, I'm ready, I just need nurturing. And I thought it was really interesting to see that this person was actually conscious about it, conscious about the feeling of, I'm ready, I'm scared, but at the same time, I need this nurturing. So it reminded me really like of a garden that's going to be a fruit vegetable garden. It just needs it needs a seed, it needs water and sun, and just kind of nurturing that. Because if we're conscious about that, we can look at this. And you mentioned that really nicely, that in fact, you can pivot, you have micro pivots and macro pivots, and at the same time to observe and be conscious, to be there and observe this.
Yeah, it's easy in a macro pivot to, massive pivot, massive change happening. I'm getting divorced, or after years of marriage, or, oh my gosh, I'm getting promoted and now I have all this responsibility that I never had before. Right? So there's the attention and energy goes to, oh my gosh, this is all new. And what people may forget is that what's also happening is that other aspects of you are being invited to change along with it. So your mindset, right? How you might think about strategies or come up with some, your level of resourcefulness. And more importantly, to your client's point, what is your self-awareness around what do you need to be successful? Is there something new you need? What gaps have now developed because you are in a new situation? You might have new responsibilities, or in the case of your client, you're ready to make that leap. What's missing? And this is where I think, we should plug a little bit about coaching. This is how and where coaching can be so useful and helpful, because you have a sounding board. You have somebody who will not only listen, but maybe hold up a mirror and say, hey, are you seeing this? Or even point out a blind spot, right? Point out a narrative. Like, I keep hearing you talk about how this is going to be a terrible change, yet you've made the change. So what's the new narrative that needs to support you so that you're aligned with this new change and aligned with this new situation or circumstance or life that you've invited, that you have said yes to, right? What could be a more empowering narrative? I think you had a great example about a narrative about doing things, right? Something like, what was that again? What you were saying?
Thanks for mentioning it. I was thinking, often we're stuck in doing, in constantly doing and doing. It's like, okay, there's a change, I'm going to do it. And then you either divorce or get a job, and you're doing it. And as you're doing it, something else pops up. Oh, okay, you've got a divorce, but you have to keep on working. And all of a sudden, something else lands, and you're doing it so much until you physically get exhausted, and you never just sat down to be in the moment and just to observe, just kind of to calm down. And it's always easier said than done. And I'll be the first one to say that, because it's very difficult. However, it's such a good teacher when you can sit down and observe some of this movement and some of these actions that are happening. Just the simple fact of, okay, for example, we just moved to a new culture. My gosh, I got I've learned English or Moby Dick, but Moby Dick didn't help me to write a resume or interview in English. It's a whole new ballgame. And just to sit there and observe a little bit. And as you're observing, you bring that more to the consciousness, and slowly but surely, we as humans will connect and be more aligned and be ready for that micro change, that next change, instead of just doing, just to stop, breathe, observe,
Yeah.
and not automatically, oh, there's this solution, there's this action, boom, boom, boom. And pretty soon you're
Yeah.
functioning like a Google search bar. And that's where we often, it gets exhausting just as I'm saying it. I'm kind of out of breath. All of that to say is to slow this down. And yeah, things are going to be fast. And to your point, you said it, change is going to be around.
Being reflective is what I'm hearing you say, right? Taking the time to reflect. I talk a lot with my clients. Often people reach out to me when they're ready to start a change, or they know it's time to change, like you had mentioned your client, but they're stuck, or they don't know how to start, or they're unsure. And earlier, part of the inner narrative, I think that you had mentioned, is this idea of I'm doing it or I'm not doing it because of, right? So
right.
sometimes the stuckness is not so much a physical stuckness, although it can appear to be that way. It's what you're saying. It can be emotional. It can be psychological. It could be the inability to have a vision of a future self, or someone not having taken time to assess and reflect and then decide on something. And so one of the things I have enjoyed and learning even about myself when we look at working with individuals, particularly through career transition, is that there are stages of change. There's stages that happen. And I like to think of myself as the coach that, let me help you get started. Let me help you move beyond, maybe you're already in the macro pivot, you termination, you were fired, you were let go, or you quit. But then you're like, now what? Right? Sometimes these pivots, these macro pivots just occur because it's outside your control. And now what's needed is all the inner dialogue, the inner work needs to rise to the occasion to match it, so that you can successfully begin, as you said, to not just do, but to sort of catch up with it and be present and fully in the experience, so that you can move forward,
Absolutely.
So I know we've said lots of different things about the reality of things happen fast. The external world we don't control. We only control what we control, which is often ourselves, our decisions, our actions, our behaviors. And then what supports this when we are faced with changes? The ability to acknowledge that we have something happening. Is this a macro pivot? And then if so, what's going on the micro side, right? What's happening for me? I'm also just thinking of some other things that we're saying, which is that some of the skills that people must have today, and I would say that to be successful, is to be agile, to have learning agility, to recognize that as change is occurring, I'm going to be invited to step outside my comfort zone. I'm going to be invited to learn things. I'm going to be expected to adapt. I'm going to need,
that's a big word. Yeah.
Right? I'm going to need to also be flexible and to have grace for myself, to acknowledge that I'm human, that I can't do it all, and that I might need, to your point, to just be still and be reflective and get my bearings first before I venture off and just start do, because people have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. People also don't want to feel like they're not staying in the game and that they can compete and all these other things. So there's a lot of competing factors that can be difficult, can be hard, can make these situations hard and difficult. But I think our goal today was to invite people into recognizing that if you're opting out by staying in this state of, I want to just stay balanced, I just want to stay in the place of familiar. I just want to, stay on home base, if you will, if you're using a
Status quo,
baseball
right?
reference,
Just
right?
have it
Baseball
nice,
reference,
nice square.
right? If you just want to stay there, you probably are not going to hit that home run. You probably might not make it to first base. So the invitation is to think about what's happening for you. What do you notice about yourself when a change, you're being either invited to change or you want to make a change? Where are you, and what could be supportive in your process? And what we're saying today is that recognizing that staying on home base, you can stay there, but it may not support you in making that change. That the ability for you to recognize that you're going to need to explore what you might need, whether those are skills, whether that's recognizing your own fears, recognizing the resources and support that could help you. And then I would say, after that's done, get after it. Go in after what it is that you want. Go seek out and locate those resources. Find out individuals that may have already gone through a change who could give you some encouragement, who could give you some perspective, maybe share with you their own change story, right? So that you can recognize that you're definitely not alone, that there's a lot of individuals. All of us are being invited in many ways to get out of our comfort zone on an almost regular daily basis.
Absolutely. And I would agree to that extent. What I would like to add is basically the following, is that also in that moment when you're being and you're observing either conscious or unconscious habits, for example, why is it that I always say no to everything? Why do I have an inner critic that says, no, this is not good because it's too expensive, or it's not for you? Why not take that same question and turn it around? I always say there's two faces to a coin. And first of all, as you're observing that habit, write it down, check it out. And then once you've observed it and kind of said, yeah, it's there, to invite yourself to think of, well, how could it look like on the other end? How could I say, instead of saying, oh, this is not good, it's not going to fit me, it's too expensive, well, this is good for me because it will give me whatever. And I invite people really to challenge yourself in not only doing that inventory of observation of your habits, or invite a third person or a coach to help you view those unconscious habits that may be present, that may keep you in that comfort zone, and then pass into the inventory and see what's on the other side. Because fear, the door, what is something that I heard recently, is the door of opportunity can either scare us, or it's basically saying, we got to stop here and there's something else on the other. And so it's just like it's fear. There's a good opportunity that something may work out at the end, but you don't know until you put the hand on the handle. Right. Or putting it there, so gently observing with all consciousness.
And I would also share that I think the other invitation that happens in those moments are two thoughts: is what are my values and what am I committed to, right? So if you're someone who values growth, then what are you committed to doing differently? Right? If you're somebody who values change, seeing the good side of change, because it's true, it means I welcome being in the unfamiliar. What are you committed to? And this is the key, is the ability to discern the commitment you want to make, but that it's one that is doable and realistic.
Right.
Or in other words, not committing to doing something that's going to require you to stretch beyond the ends of the earth, some big commitment. Maybe it's something small, such as addressing the unconscious habit of in order for me to be successful at making this change, I need to start doing a daily practice of. So maybe in the case of somebody who's looking to make a job change, and I often talk with experienced leaders about this, many of them are busy doing the work, and they're busy being successful in the roles that they have, especially if they're in a big job and they're overseeing a large department or a large staff, is they don't have time, or they don't make time to network.
That's a good point.
They don't spend the time that they need to spend on building and cultivating relationships. I always say one human at a time. And so maybe the commitment is, I'm going to carve out every week. I'm going to meet 3 people in my network, or I'm going to start with who I already know. And I'm going to start to share the fact that I'm interested in exploring new opportunities, or, hey, I'm really excited about X, Y, and Z, and I'd like to figure out how I might be able to work in a way where I can do more of that, a particular challenge or some new thing that is of interest to them. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, particularly mid-career or late-stage career, they've had all these wonderful accomplishments and successes, and they're bored, or they feel burned out, or they don't feel excited about what they're up to anymore, right? So it's time for change. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
So this idea of getting aligned to your values, and then really thinking about the commitments that you want to make, and then staying true to them and staying accountable. And that's, again, where coaches, people that are going to help hold you accountable to your commitments, to your values, can be very helpful, can be very supportive. It's part of the process of making change happen. It's part of being willing to step outside of the step into the unfamiliar, and step out of your comfort zone, so that you can elevate, that you can move beyond the current reality, toward taking steps towards that future self that you want.
Absolutely. And thanks for mentioning that, because we can't do it alone. It takes a village. I love this expression, because whatever change there is, you can't do it alone. And be it a coach or a buddy, whoever, it's important to have that facilitator there present to help the inertia, get you out of inertia and get moving. And what I would like to add to that is also the factor of time. And once you are with a person or a coach of confidence, and I've noticed this with my clients, I say, stop, get out and see green. And there's a great study by Harvard Health that says 20-minute nature break relieves stress. And the fact that, the simple that you stop or you look at green, it does an enormous amount of good, where you just stop and doing and actually start connecting, because our brains need the time to reconnect and make those connections to get that thought process going. So I would say, invite that time. Yeah, you don't have time. Make time. Make that time, maybe like you said, on a weekly basis, to either get out and walk, or just when things get hot in front of on your computer or on your phone or whatever you're doing, get up, go to the window, take a look. If hopefully you have something green to look at, studies have showed this relieves stress, and it gets you going. And my clients, some of them basically were able to connect the dots right away, versus others that took a little bit more time. So I think the timing there of just cutting out that routine and seeing something green, reconnecting to nature.
And it may not be. I was going to say, green is beautiful to think about, but not everybody lives in a place where they might even see green. If you're living in New York City, it might take a minute before you see some green. So I think the point that you're saying is, get outside, breathe fresh air, walk in your neighborhood, notice something new, be more attentive and awake to what's happening in that moment. Maybe noticing a stranger walking their dog, right? Or the sounds that you're hearing outside. They might be things that sound familiar, but maybe there's a new sound of some kind.
Absolutely. Or smells. smells, to reconnect
Exactly.
to your senses, to the
Yes.
taste, to, okay, it's hot,
Right.
it's cold, or boy,
Right.
it's misty today, or humid.
Right. Right. Or if you're on vacation and you're near, I'm a big fan of just large bodies of water, whether that's
Mhm.
lake or an
Absolutely.
ocean, and being able to be mesmerized by what that's inviting us to. So these are some strategies that might be that I hope you would see as useful for, I would say, as you navigate these changes, right? As you invite the unfamiliar into your world, into your life, because the reality of it happening is already there. We're living in a culture and in a society where things are moving, whether we think we control that or not, because it just is. So
Absolutely.
what can serve you in being able to be more of a captain of your ship
Oh,
in a
that's
way where
pretty.
you,
Uh-huh.
yeah, right, where you're
Pretty.
feeling a bit more engaged and more excited about your journey. And I think some of the things that we've talked about today uh, have mentioned a few areas, right? And so, is there something in this conversation that's resonating for you? Is there one thing that you're finding to be useful today? I would, in part on your listeners, because there's so much information and wisdom that can be out there in the world, and I think Tanja and I have considered a few things that could be supportive during transition. And I will again say, I think everybody, even myself, we all can benefit from having people in our lives, such as coaches, whose main goal and purpose is to support their clients to reaching the goals that they want to achieve, and to provide them with safe spaces where they can be themselves and they can be witnessed and heard and listened to, but also to be gently encouraged and pushed along to keep it moving, right? Keep it moving in a good way, to taking a step at a time to getting closer to what it is that you want, that future self, that ideal world, that dream that you have been wanting, whatever it is that you want to pursue, so that you can recognize the things that are keeping you stuck and start to work around it or work through it, or just find ways to move forward, but in a way that's healthy, in a way that can be supportive, and in a way that's encouraging and not demeaning or deflating or something else.
And that it's true that you're true, as much true to yourself as possible, because unfortunately life is not a rehearsal, for if I were to take that, I think what you said, and what really echoes with me, is safe space. To be able to have that safe space, to be heard, and to have that nurturing space and encouragement to say, all right, what's the next step? And any little step is better than no step at all. And getting out of the comfort zone, and respecting and going towards the goal or the dream that you want to do, be it a dream job, be it a job rotation, be it going for that international assignment that may be a week, a month, or a year. And if the employer may say, well, you got to go for a year, I'm sure if you're not ready for that, that could be a possibility of negotiation. Anything is possible once you're in that safe space and you're observing what's going on within you, and then slowly nurturing and seeing where to go, what little steps to take towards that goal, but really respecting yourself. And I think I would say safe space is really a big word here. Safe space, and being able to observe where you are and where you want to go. I would really probably underline that part. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, very interesting. I think we can go on for a long time on this passionate topic, change management and the comfort zone. But if we were to kind of wrap it up, and with some takeaways, what is something that you would want to leave the listener with with today's discussion, Amy?
Well, there was Dr. Amy Cuddy did her infamous TED Talk where she talked about how our bodies can help us to take on and embrace more empowered, taking on a more empowered stance where we get big can help us to have more boldness and fierceness as we move through the world. But her quote, which I thought was, and this was years ago that this TED Talk came out, and I can't think right now of the name of that talk, but it was a pretty simple quote, which was small steps lead to big changes.
Pretty.
Right? Small steps lead to big changes. And I think today what we're talking about is, but before you take that small step, you have to be willing to recognize that, are you in a place of stuckness? Are you in a place of familiarity, so that your awareness of your ability to start moving, that might be a difficult place to start from when you're in your comfort zone, right? Because when we are overly comfortable, or when we are in a place of familiar, the idea of stretching, the idea of stepping out into discomfort may keep us stuck. It's scary. It's not familiar. So what I think we're inviting is that in order to grow, in order to begin moving, to start taking those steps, there has to be a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. And that can be mental, that can be emotional, and that can literally be physical. Absolutely. And so I think today, as we wrap up, it's take some time to become aware of where you are, right? Take some time to become aware of what is it that you actually truly want. What is that dream or future state that you desire? And what steps are going to support you and help you in getting going to pursue them?
Great. Nice words of wisdom. What I would conclude is basically fear, emotions, be it physical, mental, whatever, can keep us trapped. And the first thing that can be done is just reach out and touch someone. I think that was a phrase from a long time ago. Basically, reach out and touch someone. Let someone know. Maybe you can do it by yourself, and you can do a step. If you can't, reach out and touch someone. I think Amy and I would be more than happy to take that reaching out. And sometimes that may help, that may not. But one will never know if one doesn't give it a try, right?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. It's been wonderful.
Tanja.
We finally did this. It's been a while since we've been doing this, and we finally did this. I hope you, the listeners or the viewers, have enjoyed this, and we'll be more than happy to reach out. We'll have our connection somewhere below here to get in contact with either Amy or myself.
Sounds wonderful. Yes, thank you. It was great to have this conversation and to bring up these points and invite people into thinking differently about, or just maybe acknowledging where they are now and where they want to go and what can support them along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.